Representative Jayapal asked a simple question: if you would be so kind and honorable as to turn around and face them and apologize to them for outing them. I mean, how many lives have been derailed because your department was either sloppy and incompetent or willfully trying to intimidate and punish these ladies for coming forward?
Which was it? The time of the gentleman has expired. The gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Wisconsin for 5 minutes.
Attorney General Bondi, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle have spent the past several months attacking the administration for doing exactly what the American people wanted when they overwhelmingly elected President Trump, securing our border and enforcing our immigration laws. I find it a bit ironic because this is the same party who just a few years ago were openly supporting strong immigration enforcement after witnessing criminal illegal aliens wreak havoc on the American communities. I have a short video I just wanted to play.
Of immigrants. We're also a nation of laws. Undocumented workers broke our immigration laws, and I believe that they must be held accountable.
They've committed a crime, deport them. No questions asked, they're gone.
No great nation can be in a position where they can't control their borders.
While we need to address the issue of immigration and the challenge we have of undocumented people in our country, we certainly don't want any more coming in.
Every place in this country are rightly disturbed by the large numbers of illegal aliens entering our country. The jobs they hold might otherwise be held by citizens or legal immigrants. The public service they use impose burdens on our taxpayers. That's why our administration has moved aggressively to secure our borders more, by hiring a record number of new border guards, by deporting twice as many criminal aliens as ever before, by cracking down on illegal hiring, by barring welfare benefits to illegal aliens.
Illegal immigration is wrong, plain and simple. When we use phrases like undocumented workers, we convey a message to the American people that their government is not serious about combating illegal immigration, which the American people overwhelmingly oppose. If you don't think it's illegal, you're not going to say it. I think it is illegal and wrong.
Open the borders, my God. You know, there's a lot of poverty in this world, and you're going to have people from all over the world, and I don't think that's something that we can do at this point. Can't do it.
Yes or no, would you allow the cities to ignore the federal law?
No.
We simply cannot allow people to pour into the United States undetected, undocumented, unchecked, and circumventing the line of people who are waiting patiently, diligently, and lawfully to become immigrants in this country.
So, Attorney General Bondi, what's the Trump administration, DOJ, doing to end the open border policies of the prior administration that saw dangerous drugs and criminal aliens flood our communities?
Congressman, President Trump has worked tirelessly, as you know, to close our border, which is what the Democrats had asked for in that video. President Trump closed our borders on day one. He is protecting Americans. He is protecting our kids from the influx of drugs that were flowing into this country from Mexico. The fentanyl precursors that were coming from China. These precursors were taken from China into Mexico. And in Mexico, they were mixed and freely taken right into our country, along with gang members, MS-13, TDA, freely coming into our cities around our country, thanks to Joe Biden's open border policies. That has stopped under Donald Trump. It will no longer happen under this administration, and he is doing everything to keep Americans safe. And let me continue. When he was elected overwhelmingly by the American people, the majority of the American people wanted Donald Trump. One of the main reasons was border security and keeping Americans safe. And that's exactly what he did. And that's why today the other side sits here, they yell, they cut me off, they want to yell, they want to ask a question and don't want answers because they want to distract from all the great things that this president and this administration working hand in hand, and that includes Secretary Noem, who has closed our borders, and Tom Homan, who has closed our borders to keep Americans safe. And they're trying to distract from that, and they're not going to do it because the American people are smarter than that, and they see through their theatrics.
Thank you. Just quickly, yesterday, Senator Grassley reached out to my office to tell me that I was one of the 20 members that was now disclosed were under surveillance from Jack Smith. This brings up the question of non-disclosure orders and whether or not they should apply to members of Congress. But with my phone records being surveilled, as well as looks like 19 other members of Congress, I'm just wondering how DOJ views that.
Time is, the gentleman's expired, but the gentlelady can respond.
As I stated earlier, Congressman, anyone's records who were illegally obtained, Democrat or Republican, we will fight vigorously to stop that. Anything with Arctic frost, I can't discuss right now.
And isn't it true, Madam Attorney General, the DOJ has changed their policy? You can't do that now. The DOJ is not going to go do that and ask the judge for an NDO.
Absolutely.
Yeah, good. That in and of itself tells you why how wrong it was. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from California.
Great, thank you. Madam Attorney General, you acknowledged earlier to Mr. Johnson that President Trump was mentioned and the release countless times, you said, in the Epstein files. I just want to play a video, though, for you that I think speaks to the frustration that many of these victims have. Of times Trump's name appears in the files, so it could at least be 1,000 times. Is that right?
The number is a total misleading factor. We have not released anyone's name that we have not released anyone's name in the Epstein files that has not been credible.
Director, could it at
we have
least be 1,000
released
times?
every piece of legally permissible information.
Okay,
you can
so
characterize the numbers however you want it.
Claiming my time, Director. It sounds like if you don't know the number, it could at least be 1,000 times. Which
It's not.
means me.
It's not.
Is it at least 500 times?
No.
Is it at least 100 times?
No.
Then what's the number?
I don't know the number.
I understand why the victims are frustrated, and the Attorney General acknowledged what Mr. Patel would not acknowledge, that it was way more than 1,000 times. But I want to move, Madam Attorney General, to weaponization of government. And yesterday it was reported that 6 members of Congress had indictments sought against him, and they were not returned by a grand jury. My colleagues have spoken about their frustration of being in subpoenas and having cell phone records combed through. Well, in 2017 and 2018, Adam Schiff and I had our cell phone records and email records combed through, not by you, but a different Department of Justice under the president. It was in retaliation for our role in the Russia interference campaign. An Inspector General report would find this improper and that the predicate for it was absurd. In 2020, after sitting on 2 committees that were a part of the president's first impeachment, an FBI agent leaked my cooperation in a national security case where my campaign was targeted. The president's FBI senior leadership authorized 2 statements to the press that said I was never suspected of wrongdoing and only helped the investigation. But that didn't stop the death threats or my GOP colleagues from referring me to an ethics investigation where Kevin McCarthy's chairman on the ethics committee would find the same thing as the FBI. Our current FBI director would then write a book called Government Gangsters and identify a long list of enemies. About a quarter of them have been either investigated or indicted. He listed me at the very top, along with Adam Schiff, and during that same testimony, refused to recuse himself when asked if he would recuse if any case came across his desk involving me or people on that list. Since that testimony, his department has put me under investigation with Senator Schiff for the nonsense mortgage fraud cases that we've seen. I get it. This is what the president does. I've priced it in. We have a bingo card at home that my kids have made of what will come next. I expected that the president would come after his enemies. But what I want to talk to you next is serious, and I did not expect this would happen, and I'd like your help on it. The president has inspired death threats against me and many sitting up here with me. In June 2025, an individual left 11 voicemails at my district office. On the voicemails, they said, "Get the message to him. I'm going to hunt him down, that motherfucker, and toss his ass over the Golden Gate Bridge by my fucking self. Donald Trump's Department of Justice in the Northern District of California declined to prosecute. On May 14, 2025, on Twitter, responding to something I posted, an individual said, "No, it wasn't, Eric, and now I'm going to kill you." The Department of Justice from the Southern District of Texas declined to prosecute. May through December of 2025, we received messages at my office that said, "I hope somebody shoots you and your children and your wife in the head. Pew, pew, motherfucker, pew, pew." I would stay indoors as much as possible, and my children, unfortunately, have to do that. The Department of Justice has not charged this individual and cited that he's a prolific caller and has health conditions, although what we have found in our own investigation and his voicemails is that he has said he will employ others to do this. The president can come after me. It's fine. I'm in the arena. So are these folks. But we never expected that the Department of Justice would not seek to prosecute and investigate those who are making threats against us. And that would include those on that side of the aisle. And I'm just asking for your help to protect life, because life is at risk with the environment we're in right now.
Congressman, I completely agree with you. I know about several of those personally involving you. I believe one has been charged publicly, and there's something I would be happy to talk to you about off camera, but I can assure you that they are very serious. They are being looked into, and I can give you more details on those. None of you should be threatened, ever. None of your children should be threatened. None of your families should be threatened. And I will work with, you can come into my office any day. I will work with all of you on both sides of the aisle if you are ever threatened. And I'll gladly talk to you after this hearing about your cases. But I can tell you some of them are very active.
Appreciate that. And I yield back.
Gentleman yields back, and we're sorry for what the gentleman and his family have had to go through. We appreciate what the Attorney General said, and I think some of the things that the gentleman from California related, we can all relate to, and it's unfortunate, it's wrong, as the Attorney General said, and we appreciate the help we get from the Justice Department. With that, we will now recognize the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Van Drew.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't know where to begin. Thank you for being here, General. You might see me when I'm right in front of you. I have to mention this first. You know, I used this word before, and my friends on the other side of the aisle got mad at me, but hypocrisy. Epstein, Epstein, Epstein. But for years on the other side of the aisle, we heard nothing. Crickets, not a word. Nothing was said when they were in control. Nothing was mentioned basically the last summer, and the ranking member points out that he did do something last year. Yeah, he did a letter complaining about the plea deal for Maxwell, but it wasn't a big deal. Then we get a new administration, and all of a sudden it's a big deal, and they feign concern, they're upset, they're investigating. They had all these years and all this time. And in fact, Stacey Plaskett, and we all know that name, when they had a congressional hearing, Democratic member, were taking texts from Epstein on questions to ask to go after Trump. So Epstein was using her Democratic colleague as a tool to go after President Trump. Just everybody keep that in mind. And then we talk about ICE and how horrible it is. And there are concerns. Everybody wants everything to go right. Nobody ever wants to see somebody die. And they complain about it. But at the same time, hypocrisy, they encourage constituents to go after the ICE agents, to challenge them, to hurt them, to attack them. And that doesn't make sense. That's hypocrisy. And then we hear about the concern of, going after Democrats, that the legal system, that judiciary and Department of Justice is going after Democrats. But they literally rework the legal system under Alvin Bragg and Letitia James to go after Republicans and those sympathetic to Republicans. So, be careful when you accuse others that you're not guilty yourself. Be careful of what you say, because you got a history, and it's easy to go over it. I just want to talk about where we were and where we are now. We had over 10 million illegal crossings in the past between 2020 and 24. Over 10 million. There's probably a much bigger number. I'm being conservative. We were told the people weren't dangerous, but they were, General. They were dangerous, many of them. More than 300 individuals on the terror watch list during that time. Violent criminals came across, as we saw consequences where mothers and fathers, children were raped, murdered, hurt, abused, beaten, trafficked, all from the drugs. My God, the drugs they brought into our babies in this country. 73,000 illegals with criminal histories, 20,000 with convictions of assault, robbery, and sex offenses, 13,000 convicted murderers in our beautiful health offenders. It was madness. It was insanity. It's bizarre. It was madness. It was insanity. It's bizarre. It's perverse. What in God's name were you doing? So we finally are cleaning this up now. We're finally trying to make it right and safe for our people. So my questions are this. General, do you believe in removing criminal illegal aliens from our communities will save American lives?
Yes, and given the cases that you just discussed, that's proof of it every single day. President Trump is committed to that. This entire cabinet is committed to that and making and keeping Americans safe.
Thank you. Would you agree that, and thank you for doing that, would you agree that allowing individuals with known criminal histories to enter and remain in the United States, we knew this back then, they knew it. Would you agree that creates serious risk to our public safety? I know the answers, but let's just say them clearly.
Yes.
Would you agree that when dangerous individuals are released instead of detained, and they were released over and over and over again, and these are the real issues. This is really what America cares about. They want their children and their families to be safe. Do you think if you release them instead of detaining them, that crimes will happen because of that?
Absolutely.
Would you agree that, I'm sorry.
And it did.
And it did, thank you. Would you agree that cooperation between, and this is a biggie, and I'm gonna ask you to elaborate on this. This is a big deal. This is why some of the problems we're seeing in some of the places like Minnesota are happening. That cooperation between federal and local enforcement, which we always used to have, helps remove violent offenders from our communities, that we should be a team.
Yes.
And can you elaborate on that a little bit? In other words, when the local enforcement is forced by the politicians, not their fault, not to do their job and not cooperate, why does it create the situations that we see where we have need for crowd control? By the way, they're not peaceful. Those are not peaceful protesters. We know what a peaceful protester is. When you spit on law enforcement, when you push them, when you hit them, when you beat their car, if you can answer the question, thank you.
And time's expired.
I'll yield back.
You may answer the question.
Thank you. Yes, I spent 4 days myself in Minnesota, in Minneapolis. What I will say about some of these sanctuary cities, some of these democratic cities, law enforcement, they quietly want to work with us. I've spoken to law enforcement in multiple cities who want to work with us. And yes, we're gonna do everything we can to keep our citizens safe, whether or not these Democrat-controlled sanctuary cities do or don't.
And damn it, that's what really matters. I yield back.
Mr. Chair, I have a UC.
Ms. Crockett from Texas is recognized for UC.
Thank you so much. Donald Trump's approval rating implodes on his strongest issue. This is from Newsweek today. It says 40% of people approve of Trump's handling of immigration and border security, while 60% disapprove.
Without objection,
that is a
admitted.
net drop.
Now I recognize the gentleman
20.
from California, Mr. Liu.
Thank you, Attorney General Bondi, for being here today. I'm going to show you two photos.
Thank you.
I'm going to show you two photos of former Prince Andrew. Prince Andrew attended various parties with Jeffrey Epstein. Under the law Congress passed, you were allowed to redact photos to protect the victims of Epstein's sex trafficking operation. You redacted the photos of this victim's face because you were following the congressional law. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, that we redacted the victim's
Because you were
face?
following the congressional law, correct?
Yes.
Okay. You have now established that please put the photos back up, that we are looking at a sex trafficking victim. Under the Federal Victims Trafficking Protection Act, not only is Jeffrey Epstein guilty, but anyone who patronizes Epstein's sex operation is also guilty of a crime. That's why I find it absolutely despicable that you sought to protect Epstein's clients like former Prince Andrew. Last July, you closed the case on Epstein's abusers. The July 2025 memo from your Department of Justice stated, quote, "We did not uncover evidence that could predicate an investigation against uncharged third parties." These two photos, please put the photos back up. These two photos staring you in the face are evidence of a crime and more than enough evidence to predicate an investigation against former Prince Andrew. So I ask you, Attorney General Pam Bondi, why did you shut down this investigation last July, and why have you not prosecuted former Prince Andrew?
I don't believe you asked Merrick Garland these questions when he was Attorney General and set before
I agree with you.
You twice.
I'm reclaiming my time. I agree with you. I agree with you. During the Biden administration, I called for people looking at Epstein files. Merrick Garland dropped the ball, as did Attorney General Bill Barr, as did Alex Acosta, a whole string of failures. But you are in charge. You have the power to change things, to hold these men accountable, and you're doing the opposite. You're protecting them. So I want to move on to another man.
Can I answer
Donald
that,
Trump.
though?
I want to move on to another
Can I
question.
answer your question about protecting
You
Prince
answered the
Andrew?
question.
You're saying no. I love this.
I want to discuss another man, Donald Trump, who is all over the Epstein files, like former Prince. Here's the video. Like former Prince Andrew, Donald Trump attended various parties with Jeffrey Epstein. I want to know, were there any underage girls at that party or at any party that Trump attended with Jeffrey Epstein?
This is so ridiculous, and that they are trying to deflect from all the great things Donald Trump has done. There is no evidence that Donald Trump has committed a crime. Everyone knows that. This has been the most transparent presidency. He's the one that asked that those files
I'm reclaiming my time.
be released.
I got your answer. You said there's no evidence.
President Trump asked
Mr. Chairman, please stop the clock.
Stop the clock. The legislation. This is ridiculous.
Time belongs to the gentleman from California.
Okay. I'm going to put up another document from a witness who called the FBI's National Threat Operations Center, because I believe you just lied under oath. There is ample evidence in the Epstein file.
Don't you ever accuse me of a crime.
I believe you just lied under oath, and this is on videotape. You said there's no evidence of a crime. I'm showing you, here is a witness statement who called into the FBI's Threat Operations Center. He drove Donald Trump around in a limo. He overheard what Donald Trump said to Jeffrey on his cell phone. He was so angry, he was going to stop a limo and hurt Donald Trump. And he met a girl who said she was raped by Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein. She later had her head blown off, and officers at the scene said that could not have been suicide. No one at the Department of Justice interviewed this witness. You need to interview this witness immediately. Epstein should rot in hell, so should the men who patronized his operation. And as we sit here today, there are over 1,000 sex trafficking victims, and you have not held a single man accountable. Shame on you. If you had any decency, you would resign right after this hearing concludes.
The gentleman has expired.
May I respond?
Yeah, I don't know how you respond. No one can.
I did not ask a question, Ms.
He doesn't
You're
want
allowed
to talk
to.
about
I did
the
not ask a
horrific
question.
crime in California. He does not want to talk about
I did not ask a
crime
question.
in his
She
state.
can't just ad-lib stuff. I did not ask a question.
Meeting will be in order. The gentleman has yielded back his time. I think our next witness will be more than happy to let the Attorney General
Madam
respond.
Attorney General, would you like to?
Gentleman from Alabama is recognized for 5 minutes.
You have a few minutes to respond.
Thank you, Congressman. This is what Congressman Liu didn't want to talk about. He didn't want to talk about all the crime that is happening in his state. California refuses to honor detainees because of its dangerous sanctuary city policies. The refusal means California has released 4,561 criminal illegal aliens onto its street. The crimes of these aliens include 31 homicides, 661 assaults, 574 burglaries, 184 robberies, 1,489 dangerous drug offenses, 379 weapons offenses, and 234 sexual predator offenses. That's why they are deflecting. That's why they're trying to talk about the Epstein files. That's currently happening in his home state.
Attorney General, thank you for being here, and I wanted to make sure you had time to respond. I'm going to change gears a little bit. In October, when you were testifying before the Senate, I know you and my friend Senator Katie Britt discussed concerns of infiltration of the illegal Chinese vapes into our country. As a father of three, obviously, I'm worried a little bit about this, and I believe that many parents in the country share our similar concerns. Can you provide an update on DOJ's work in this space over the past few months?
Yes, and thank you for bringing that up. We're talking about the vapes. And this should be an issue where both sides of the aisle can work together on. Parents need to understand, children need to understand that so many of these are being manufactured in China, sent to our country, and have the potential to be laced with lethal drugs. We've seen an overdose. We need to get on the front end of this before we have another crisis and children are dying. I've partnered with Secretary Kennedy, of course, at HHS on this matter, but thank you for bringing it up. You know, they're selling these things as flavored vapes illegally in many stores around the country. Secretary Kennedy and I actually we went and did something on this, and it was sadly the day that Charlie Kirk was assassinated. And so it didn't get a lot of attention, nor should it have after that happened. But yes, we're continuing to work on that, and thank you for bringing that up. That's happening in all of our states, and I would ask everyone here, I know Congresswoman Ross was just nodding, it's happening in every state. And not only are they laced with THC, many of these vapes, but they could be laced with fentanyl. We have had a child, I wish I could think of the state it was in, but we have already had someone overdose. And we have to get together on this, and we have to get on the front end of this. And I would love to work across the aisle on this to protect our kids. How many school kids do you see now vaping? And it's not only, I believe a vape has 20 cigarettes, but you know, that's one vape is 20 cigarettes, I believe it is, but also what they could be laced with, because so many of them, the majority of them, are manufactured in China.
Sure, and if you need additional resources, please let us know as you're going through the process. And then I'm going to change gears one more time on you. Under the Biden administration, there was a lot of confusion created when parts of the DOJ began treating software developers like financial institutions. Even when they did not hold or control anyone's money, they were simply building the technology. That uncertainty made it harder for Americans to build, innovate here at home. Earlier this year, the Deputy Attorney General issued a memo entitled Ending Regulations by Prosecution, a clear break from the Biden administration's approach, and I think it's important that that's a good step in the right direction, but can you talk a bit about how the DOJ is now putting that memo into practice, especially when it comes to making sure that people are just writing the software and don't control the user's funds, we don't want them treated as an unlicensed money, or they're not money transmitters, so.
Yes, and we're doing everything we can to protect the American people on that, and I would refer everyone to Deputy Attorney General Blanche's memo, and we're working as hard as we can on that topic.
Because we want to lead the way in the space on that, so we appreciate the help. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll yield back 10 seconds.
Gentleman yields back. We'll recognize the gentleman from Arizona for unanimous consent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a number of UCs.
Gentleman can proceed.
Thank you. Bombshell new docs show Trump called police about Epstein in 2006.
Without objection.
Kamala Harris defends Biden administration decision not to release Epstein files.
Without objection.
Why weren't they released during the Biden administration?
Without objection.
House Democrat Stacey Plaskett exchanged texts with Epstein during 2019 congressional hearing.
Without objection.
New York judge allows Epstein victims' claims against Plaskett to proceed.
Without objection.
Hakeem Jeffrey solicited funding from Epstein in 2013 after financier was convicted child sex offender.
Without objection.
Jeffrey Epstein was invited to dim fundraising dinner and to get to know Hakeem Jeffries by firm working with Brooklyn's Barack.
Without objection.
An email from Leslie Groff to Jeffrey Epstein concerning Hakeem Jeffries fundraising. Epstein file says Biden was replaced in 2019, question mark?
Without objection.
Thank you.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from California is recognized. Mr. Correa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome, Ms. A.G. Bondi. I agree with you. Our top priority should be protecting Americans. In my past life in the California State Legislature, I did a lot of work on solving sex crimes, passing legislation to update our codes. And I found that the biggest challenge to solving sex crimes is reporting them. Victims have to have the guts to stand up to report those sex crimes. But it's not easy. It's the most unreported sex crime there is. Crime there is sex crimes. It's painful, humiliating. And a lot of time the victims don't think anything's gonna come out of their reporting these crimes. Then we have adults who as children were molested, boys and girls who will live in silence for the rest of their life. I believe the Epstein files are just one of many sex rings, sex crimes taking place in our society today. I hear 1,200 Epstein victims, some additional victims as young as 9 to 10 years old. The challenge I have today, what bothers me today about this hearing, Madam AG, is what's the message we're sending out there on Main Street? Shouldn't ask a question I don't know an answer to, but I'm gonna ask the victims behind you right now. First, can you please stand up? And then, can you please raise your hand if you think after everything you've heard today, you feel that our AG, the feds, have your back? Do we have your back? Raise your hand if you're confident that we got your back. And that's the issue, Madam AG. We've got to make sure that victims stand up and report the crimes. Otherwise, we're going to be taking a step backwards. Today, AI, cyber, social media, the new realm for people to be hurt, attacked sexually. These are the areas I'd welcome the opportunity to work with you on. It's not your problem, it's not my problem, it's our problem. But to have redacted files that are not showing us the names of these predators is wrong. These are very powerful people. This was a very expensive business, and we don't know who they are. I would imagine they're very prominent Republicans, very Republican Democrats, and we are covering up for them. We got to know what's going on out there, Madam AG. It looks like you want to say something. I'm going to give the opportunity to address my statement.
I look forward to working with you on any crimes involving child sex predators, children, and also cyber crimes. That is a tremendous problem now throughout our country. AI, you are correct. AI is causing great problems online we're working on that though. AI is an incredible tool, but it also can be fraught with peril with victims of crime. I've experienced that with someone I know who we've been trying to help. I look forward, though, to working with you on that and all cyber crimes. Can I?
Please, go ahead.
And as I said before, to any victims, we ask them to come forward to our office, and we want to work with them. I have never not worked with a victim, and I believe I've actually spoken to several of the
Madam,
victims'
if I can reclaim my time, I only have a minute.
Behind me.
If I can reclaim my time. I just think we start out by making sure those redactions are unredacted, those Epstein files, to make sure that the public, according to the law, following the law, that those names in those files are made public. We have to make sure we tell those predators there is no place for them to hide, and if they commit the crime, they're gonna fry for it. It starts with showing us the names of the perpetrators in the Epstein files.
May I respond to that?
Sure.
Okay. So If any man's name was redacted that should not have been, we will, of course, unredact it. If a victim's name was unredacted, please bring it to us and we will redact it. We were given 30 days to review and redact and unredact millions of pages of documents. Our error rate is very low, but there are
victims are
always
right behind you. We've got to convince them
that
we're doing a good job
everything we can to help
protecting
the
them.
victims. We will
Thank
do
you,
everything
Mr.
we can.
Chair, I'm out of time.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from California, Mr. Kiley, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Madam Attorney General. I wanted to return to a point that the chairman raised at the beginning of this hearing, which is these jurisdictions that refuse to honor detainer requests from Immigration and Customs Enforcement, often called sanctuary jurisdictions. Now, I know that you are not involved directly in immigration operations per se, but you do deal with the legal issues surrounding these jurisdictions. So let's say we have someone who's here illegally, who has committed a crime that, like the thousands of people you mentioned in California, murderers, sexual predators, drug traffickers. If that individual is in detention in a jurisdiction that has a sanctuary policy where they do not honor ICE detainers versus in any other jurisdiction where they do, how does the nature of apprehending that person, how does the nature of ICE's involvement in that operation differ in those two circumstances?
Well, I believe you've seen that in Minnesota, where people were not cooperating with us. I believe there a lot of local law enforcement did want to cooperate, but we are doing everything in our power to arrest and deport illegal criminal aliens, and that is not going to stop under Donald Trump's administration. You know, why sanctuary cities are so dangerous, what we've seen in Minneapolis. Where do all the criminals go? The gangs, TDA, MS-13. Where are they going to go? They're going to go to a sanctuary jurisdiction because they believe they're protected, and that's not fair to the citizens of those cities.
Yeah, and this is a point that there at least used to be a lot of consensus on. The idea that, you know, it's better to do a handoff to the immigration authorities in a custodial setting rather than releasing them where they have to be apprehended in the community. This is Alejandro Mayorkas when he was before this committee, not exactly a paragon of border security, but he said, "I do not consider it in the service of public safety to release an individual into the community when that individual can be released to Immigration and Customs Enforcement for prompt removal." Now, his words are one thing, his actions are another. But when you have jurisdictions across the country, including my state of California, doing systematically precisely the thing that even Alejandro Mayorkas said threatens public safety, I mean, what does that say to you?
It's a danger to the citizens of your community, and thank you for fighting to protect them.
Absolutely. And you know, we're having this conversation right now in relation to Homeland Security funding. And I believe there are some common sense reforms that have been proposed that folks on both sides would agree make sense. But those reforms have to go hand in hand with reforming this reckless practice of refusing to cooperate, refusing to honor detainers, and declaring oneself to be a sanctuary. So I'm hoping that we can find bipartisan support for what has long been a bipartisan principle. I want to go to a second topic, which is the school board memo, which I know that you have rescinded. And it was initially promulgated by Attorney General Garland when he came into office with President Biden, essentially opening an investigation into parents who were showing up at school board meetings and expressing their views on COVID policies, masks, various other issues, and using the full apparatus of federal law enforcement and counterterrorism to go after these parents. Now, he said this was because there was an increase of threats, but when even his own FBI director, Christopher Wray, was before this committee, he said there was no evidence of an increase in threats. Yet nevertheless, when I asked him if he regretted the memo, Attorney General Garland said there was absolutely nothing wrong with the memo. Now, I take it you disagree with that, having now rescinded it?
Absolutely. That was one of the main focuses of President Trump and this administration. We will protect parents at school boards. We will protect children in schools. We will protect parents' rights for their children's education in our school system in this country. We will protect Christians. We will protect everyone who wants to freely protest. If Christians want to protest in front of an abortion clinic without being arrested, they will do so.
Thank you very much. And finally, I thank you for your efforts to step up the detection and rooting out of fraud. My home state is California. Any idea if there might be any fraud going on in California?
Well, we are establishing, as you have heard, a fraud unit, and I'm sorry you're having to deal with that in your state, but the cavalry's coming. And we have Colin McDonald, who is hopefully will be confirmed soon. We're working on Minneapolis. I don't know if you were sitting here when I said that, but California was right up there. I'm sorry to say for both sides of the aisle that California is right up there with fraud. It's out of control, but we are coming to your rescue. Donald Trump is coming to the rescue.
Well, thank you very much. And unfortunately, I think you'll find that what's happening in California pales in comparison to what's been going on in Minnesota. Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
Actually, I think the gentlelady from Pennsylvania.
Gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Bondi, I'm here. On September 25th, President Trump signed a memorandum known as NSPM 7, purporting to address domestic terrorism. But Americans across the political spectrum were immediately alarmed by the memo's blurring of the line between unlawful conduct and constitutionally protected speech and activity, as well as its call to investigate, prosecute, and dismantle groups that the president and Stephen Miller described without evidence as, quote, an organized campaign of radical left terrorism. Now, counterterrorism experts were further alarmed by the administration's singular focus on left-wing extremism, combined with the sudden deletion from the DOJ website of decades of research and law enforcement analysis, which had concluded that right-wing extremism poses the greatest terrorism threat to Americans. The president's memo broadly and vaguely links violent conduct to ideologies, and it targeted specifically anti-American, anti-Christian, and anti-capitalist beliefs, as well as, quote, hostility to so-called traditional American views on family, religion, and morality, end quote. President Trump has repeatedly and openly, however falsely, tried to brand his political opponents with these sentiments listed in his memo. But as you know, as a lawyer, holding beliefs that the White House disagrees with is not a crime. And the statute defining domestic terrorism requires criminal acts, not just thoughts and ideas. That's why legal experts, nonprofit leaders, religious freedom, and civil rights advocates immediately raised the alarm that the new presidential directive was a politically motivated attack on civil society designed to silence those who disagree with the administration. So, Ms. Bondi, Section 3 of that memo directed you, as Attorney General, to submit to the President and Stephen Miller a list of groups or entities whose members are engaged in acts that meet the definition of domestic terrorism. And then on December 4th, you directed the FBI to work with a variety of law enforcement entities to compile a list of groups and entities engaged in such acts by January 3rd, 2026, and to update that report every 30 days thereafter. So can we assume that you or persons under your direction at the Department of Justice have prepared that list of groups or entities who are designated as domestic terrorist organizations? And I just remind you, that's a yes or no question. Did you prepare the list?
I'm not going to answer it yes or no, but what I will say is I know Antifa is part of that. I will talk to you about that.
I'm reclaiming my time. I asked you whether you
an Antifa member
was
arrested in Minneapolis federal court for
my
cyber
time.
stalking.
Did you
they
have
ask a question
list?
and don't want an answer.
The answer is yes or no.
Time belongs to the gentlelady from Pennsylvania. Gentlelady can proceed.
Okay. So will you commit to providing this committee with any list of organizations that you have recommended be designated as domestic terrorist organizations?
We will comply with the law in all matters.
Will you commit to provide this committee with your list of entities that you recommend be designated as domestic terrorist organizations?
I'm not going to commit to anything to you because you won't let me answer questions.
Okay, well then we do understand that your current position is that you have a secret list of people or groups that you are accusing of domestic terrorism but you won't share it with Congress. And I'd remind you that when the U.S. government designates an entity as a foreign terrorist organization, it must report that to Congress and to the entity, because the government can make a mistake and the entity has the opportunity to contest it. So your position seems to be that if you falsely designate an American or an American organization as a terrorist group, there's nothing they can do about it. I think we get it. You don't want to answer the question.
No, you don't get anything regarding public safety.
Thank you.
Nothing.
Thank you for the insult. It's clear you didn't come to Congress prepared to answer questions that the American people have every right to have answered. But if you were prepared to answer truthfully, here's what we expect the facts to show. The administration is keeping lists of Americans who the White House says are engaged in domestic terrorism. Those lists could include Americans who have not committed any acts of terrorism, but simply disagree with this administration, people like Renee Good and Alex Preddy. And your list may include clergy, elected officials, and members of indivisible groups across the country. And those lists likely don't include Proud Boys or Oath Keepers who were actually convicted. Americans have never tolerated political demagogues who use the government to punish people on an enemies list. It brought down McCarthy, it brought down Nixon, and it will bring down this administration as well.
And you're right.
Back.
That's why we're so glad they rescinded the memorandum targeting parents. For goodness sake, as the gentleman from California just pointed out in his 5 minutes, the gentleman from Kentucky is recognized for 5
May I
minutes.
respond very briefly to her statement?
Well, I think we can do that probably on one of our members' time.
Okay, thank you. I don't want that to get away. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Behind me, I have 3 documents from the DOJ production that are emblematic of the massive failure of the DOJ to comply with the Epstein Files Transparency Act. To my right is an email that was sent by the victims' lawyers to the DOJ. It was a list of names not to redact, a list of names not to release. What did the DOJ do with this email? They released this email in the document production. Literally the worst thing you could do to the survivors, you did. And they're getting phone calls. A lot of these people didn't want to be known. And we know you touched the document because you redacted one name and you redacted the lawyer's name, but you left the survivor's name there. The next document I want to show you, that was in the title, the victims' survivors' names, all right? The title of this one is Child Sex Trafficking, Co-Conspirators, fully redacted. And by the way, I'm gonna unredact them here. Les Wexner is in this. Now your your deputy attorney general said, oh, well, he appears hundreds of times in the files. But he doesn't appear in this file until I forced you to release it, where he's listed as a co-conspirator, not to tax evasion, but to child sex trafficking, not to prostitution, not to money laundering, child sex trafficking. And then finally, what we have here is the third exhibit that I have is emblematic of the FD 302 release. These are the documents that we need that you're holding on to and over-redacting because they have the names of the men who are implicated. How do we know? Because the survivors gave testimony to the FBI, and it's in there. And what happens when you go to the portal at the DOJ to look at what's behind this redaction? Another redaction. So we can't even see them. And then there's some of these files you've pulled down from the website that we will never see because we can't search the redactions. So I have several questions for you. Who's responsible? Are you able to track who in your organization made this massive failure and released the victims' names? Are you able to track who it was that obscured Les Wexner's name as a co-conspirator in an FBI document? Do you have that kind of accountability?
I believe Wexner's name was listed more than 4,000 times.
Yeah, I already told you that. This is where he's listed as a co-conspirator.
Can I finish my answer? Come on, let me finish my answer. We corrected that within 40 minutes. He was already, you're acting like everybody's trying to cover up Wexner's name.
Reclaiming my time.
I'm going to answer this question.
Reclaiming my time.
Mr.
Chairman.
This is how this works.
Can I have my time back? Mr. Chairman.
The gentlelady can give her answer. The time belongs to the gentleman from Kentucky.
All right, I'm reclaiming my time.
Can I give my answer?
So
Yes.
I'm going to put the language of the bill up on the screen.
Chairman,
Because I
may I
have
give my
another
answer
question.
on that?
Here's
It's a political
the question.
joke, and I need to give my answer on that.
We'll let the Attorney General respond, and then the gentleman can move to his next question.
It's my time.
Within 40 minutes, you asked me a question.
You can give
Within
me-
40 minutes, Wexner's name was added back.
Within 40 minutes of me catching you red-handed.
There was one redaction out
Where
of
he's
over
listed as a
4,700,
co-conspirator.
and we invited you in. This guy has Trump
Gentlemen.
derangement syndrome. He needs to get, you're a failed politician.
Gentlemen,
You need to
time
get
is
on
up.
with these matters.
Mr. Chairman, please restore his time and remind the witness of the rules here.
There is no credible information. None. If there were, I would bring the case yesterday that he trafficked to other individuals.
Is that your position as well?
My position is any victim who comes forward, of course, we would love to hear from them. 1-800-CALL-FBI. Did you ask Merrick Garland that the last 4 years? Did you talk about Epstein?
I am reclaiming my time. I'm glad you're
years?
asking about Merrick Garland.
You don't get to reclaim
because
time
this
when
is
you don't-
bigger than
when you can't-
Watergate.
when I don't answer a question the
This
way you
goes
want.
over 4 administrations. You don't have to go back to Biden. Let's go back to Obama. Let's go back to George Bush. This cover-up spans decades, and you are responsible for this portion of it.
And that's
now,
where the
I want to
most
know at what
transparent-
point did the FBI and the DOJ decide that Lex Wessner was not a co-conspirator? Because our Epstein Files Transparency Act requires you, please put it back on the screen, please, to release the internal decision about whether to prosecute him or not, and it's not in the files, and it's not in the files for any of these other men.
Time of the gentleman has expired.
May she answer?
And he's a hypocrite because he voted against the ban that we were talking about on deep fake AI porn. Only 2 people voted against it, and you were one of them, hypocrite.
The gentleman's time has expired.
She didn't answer the question.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Chairman, could she answer the question?
Chairman, I was wondering.
The gentlelady's allowed, the Attorney General's allowed to respond the way she wants to respond to any member's questions, Republican, Democrat.
All right, I have unanimous consent request.
Gentleman's recognized for a UC.
All right. This is an example. I'm submitting these 302 forms that are entirely redacted, even when you go to look at them.
Without objection.
I'm submitting a witness statement that implicates Les Wexner.
Without objection.
I'm submitting an article from the New York Times that the DOJ released nude photos and identifiable pictures of the victims. I'm submitting a letter from AG Bondi to Kash Patel, imploring him to quit keeping the files when you found out that they were keeping files from you, because they're still redacting files that you...
Chairman, are we going to recess for votes?
Yes, we are.
I'm submitting for unanimous consent a document of 17 individuals who've resigned because of the Epstein files.
Without objection. Just want to check on how much time we have left in votes, but one thing I've learned here of late that they'll wait on us. How much time do we have? Oh, they just called it. Okay. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Maryland.
And thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to start by saying I appreciate what you said, Attorney General Bondi, and you said it to me personally, that you take the personal security of every member of Congress seriously and that people can contact you about that. And in these times, that's a very serious matter. So I thank you for that. Article 2, Section 1, Clause 7 of the Constitution is the Domestic Emoluments Clause. And it says that the president is limited to his salary in office and cannot receive any other money from the federal government while he's in office. It cannot be increased by $1. This president is the first president in U.S. history who has repeatedly sued the federal government for $230 million for the judicial search warrant at Mar-a-Lago, which was perfectly lawful and was never struck down. But now he's suing the IRS for $10 billion. He's suing the IRS for $10 billion, which I think is around 80% of its annual budget, because his tax returns were leaked. And they were illegally leaked by a private contractor who actually is in prison now, Charles Littlejohn, but he wants $10 billion. Now, I want to ask you the question of whether you think it would violate the Domestic Emoluments Clause for you to settle that $10 billion case or any of the other claims that the president's made against the government. He himself has remarked, it's interesting because I'm the one that makes the deal, right? And he says, I kind of have to work it out with myself. Do you think it would violate the Domestic Emoluments Clause for the president to work out a deal from people who are his subordinates under his unitary executive theory to get money in one of these cases?
I'm not going to discuss pending litigation.
Okay, so theoretically you're saying because his privacy rights were violated in that tax case, and they were. I'm with the president on that. I mean, his Mar-a-Lago thing is ridiculous, but there's no doubt that his tax returns, despite the fact that he promised to release them, despite the fact that every other president released the tax returns, he suffered embarrassment when it showed that he hadn't paid taxes for several years, and he had a right for that not to happen. Now, I want to turn back to the Epstein survivors, because President Trump may have been a little bit embarrassed by the release of those tax returns. How much do you think the claims of these survivors are worth? As the good congressman from Kentucky just pointed out, there were lots of survivors who had decided, for reasons of their own, never to release their names. That determination was represented to people in Congress, and we built it into our federal law that their names could not be released, and yet you published their names, their phone numbers, their addresses, personally identifying information. If Donald Trump can get $10 billion theoretically from the Department of Justice, how much should these people get for a far worse violation of their privacy rights and a far greater danger established to them in their lives?
Do you even know who Chase Mulligan is? You're so obsessed with, you don't, do you?
I'm going to teach you the rules again. You're the Attorney General of the United States. We have rules here.
You're obsessed with him.
You're the Attorney General of the United States.
You're obsessed with Donald Trump. You have Trump derangement syndrome.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like my time restored. I'd like my time restored.
In your district. In your district, and you don't even know about it, about keeping children safe from online predators.
Time belongs to the gentleman from Maryland. The gentleman can proceed.
Yeah, and I want the whole country to look at this, because this is the Attorney General of the United States whose job is law enforcement. We've never had a witness who has misunderstood our rules and been unable to conform his or her conduct to our rules before. We have only 5 minutes, and so we use our time to ask you specific questions.
How long are you giving me to answer?
Excuse me, I'm not yielding to you right now. I'd like that second restored too. So, Ms. Bondi, the way it works is we ask you a question and you answer it. And if you go off on a wild goose chase, another tangent, you start reading statistics or you start talking about stuff going on in our district. And by the way, I invite you to my district. Come to my district, but that's not what we're here to do today. Okay? So, and you do that, then we're allowed to say we reclaim our time. At that point, you have to be quiet. You have no choice. You have to be quiet. So I hope you understand the rule at this point. Now, here's what I want to ask you. You're in law enforcement. We've seen all kinds of evidence of crimes. And when we go over to the Department of Justice for the 4 computers for every member of Congress, we see more evidence of crimes. Will you create a joint task force of the Department of Justice and governors and state attorney generals and district attorneys across the country to investigate the crimes that have taken place against these victims and more than 1,000 like them? The DOJ is not doing its job. Will you create a task force with state and local law enforcement to make that happen?
Gentlelady can respond if she wants to.
Thank you, Chairman. He called Chase Mulligan a wild goose chase and didn't even know who he was. He is a defendant in your own district who preyed on girls.
Mr. Chairman.
Well, you know what? If he were part of the Epstein investigation, you wouldn't do anything about it.
Online chat rooms and committed sextortion. Yet he didn't even know in your tiny little district who he was.
Mr. Chairman, she's embarrassing you.
He's about to be
This is your committee, and she is embarrassing you.
Shame on you.
The time of the gentleman has expired. I would remind the committee that last Congress. Secretary Mayorkas was here numerous times, and he wouldn't answer our questions, even when we sent them to him ahead of time in writing. So that's what we've had to deal with. I think the Attorney General is doing just fine. We have votes shortly. I will go to the gentleman from Virginia, and then we will take a break to head to the floor.
I thank the chairman, Attorney General Bondi. Thank you for being here. And I wanted to thank you for your work at DOJ in restoring the rule of law, encouraging transparency surrounding Jack Smith's partisan investigations into President Trump, declassifying information about the Russia collusion hoax, cracking down on sanctuary jurisdictions, and establishing the National Fraud Enforcement Division. Let me first go to securing the border and immigration enforcement. Our new governor has recently rescinded 287G cooperation between the state and ICE. Can you talk about, have you evaluated the public safety impact, how that would affect safety in Virginia to withdraw that support and what that would do to criminal activity involving illegal immigrants in Virginia?
Yes, it would be detrimental. And as you know, Congressman, one of the top members of MS-13 in the entire country was living in Virginia, in a suburb, among all of us, living not even probably half an hour away from where we are now. And the cooperation previously with the governor, with the members of the state of Virginia, helped catch him and take him off our streets. An illegal MS-13, one of the heads for the entire country, was living in Virginia. And it's a shame that that's happening now. And thank you for talking about it, because we're going to keep America safe. And when people feel like they can flee to these cities and states and be safe, they can't. Because Donald Trump is going to protect Americans. We're going to protect the citizens there, whether or not the governors, the mayors are going to do it or not. But President Trump is. We're going to keep Americans safe from violent gang members like he's been doing this last year.
We appreciate that. We appreciate your work to make that happen in Virginia and keep Virginia safe. I want to move on to the Fraud Enforcement Division that you've established. My understanding is that this initiative is intended to centralize, coordinate enforcement of fraud laws related to government programs. You've talked about Minnesota, you've talked about California. Would this affect Virginia as well? Because we have fraud in Virginia as well.
Absolutely, and we look forward to working with you.
Would this affect things like long-term care accountability, senior living facilities engaged in Medicaid fraud, including systemic overbilling practices and the misappropriation of taxpayer-funded benefits?
That is exactly what it's set up to help.
Okay. I know that whether it was related to fraud specifically or another subject, that under the Biden administration, there was a sitting member of the Virginia General Assembly under investigation. Is that investigation still ongoing? Can you speak to that?
I can't discuss that.
Okay. I'm going to move on to the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding Americans. Last year, President Trump signed the One Big Beautiful Bill into law, which included the Hearing Protection Act, part of it that was sponsored by myself and Congressman Clyde. It reduced the national firearms tax, $200 tax on suppressors and short-barreled firearms, to zero. And while the tax has been eliminated, the NFA's registration and paperwork requirements remain in effect, and your DOJ has said that would, even though the tax was reduced to zero, that the registration requirement is still somehow necessary, even though with regard to Obamacare and the Affordable Care Act, when that mandate was, when that tax penalty was reduced to zero, you decided that the mandate was no longer necessary. How are you justifying the existence of this registry?
Congressman, that's pending litigation right now.
It is, and I hope you would reconsider that. I yield back.
The gentleman yield?
I yield to the chairman.
I think that Attorney General Bondi, why did Jack Smith have to pay some secret source $20,000 of taxpayer money? Do you know the answer to that?
I can't discuss anything on that matter, but that's a good question, Chairman Jordan.
Well said. It's a good question because he subpoenaed just about every Republican in this town, got half the Congress's phone numbers if you were a Republican. But he has to pay some secret source a bunch of taxpayer money. We'd like to know, the committee would like to know how many other sources he paid. Was it more than $20,000? Why he had to do those things? We'd like to know when you can, if you could get that information to the committee. I think when you think about the guy who was trying to put the President of the United States in prison, ridiculous as that whole thing was, we'd kind of like to know the answer to that if you could. And with that, we're going to stand in recess. We will go as quickly as we can and vote. We have 2 quick votes on the floor, and we will be back. There is actually some lunch if you all need it. We have for our members, and since you're back here, you can have some. We normally have plenty.
Mr. Chairman.
We'll take a recess.
Before you gavel out, can I ask for unanimous consent to enter to a record the article entitled Inside Trump's DOJ dated October 16, 2020?
Without objection, we stand in recess. And the gentleman from Colorado is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Here. Attorney General Bondi, 6 days ago, you posted online, quote, "If you come for law enforcement, the Trump administration will come for you," end quote. I want to show you just a brief video. It's about 30 seconds, and I'll ask you a couple questions about it.
You guys are disgusting, man. Hey, you guys are disgusting. I'm former law enforcement. You're disgusting. You are the Nazi. You are the Gestapo. You can't see it because you're chasing your pension, right? Your pension, your retirement, right? That's what runs your life, your retirement. The sad thing is they're not even going to get their pension because it's going to be worthless. And shame on you. Shame on you. Shame on you.
Attorney General Bondi, that man works for you now, right?
Who was that, Congressman?
The man in that video, the one who was in the police-worn body cam footage, the one allegedly yelling, "Kill him," at police officers on January 6th, his name is Jared Wise.
He does work for us.
He works for you at the Department of Justice.
He does.
This is an individual whom a federal grand jury indicted for 2 felonies and 4 misdemeanors related to his participation in the attack on January 6th. One of those charges was forcibly assaulting, resisting, opposing, impeding, intimidating, and interfering with police with the intent to commit another felony. This is who you choose as the chief law enforcement officer of the United States of America to hire at the Department of Justice. Someone on video yelling, "Kill him," at police officers? Right?
I believe he was pardoned by President Trump.
Oh, he was pardoned. You're right. You're right. Pardoned by President Trump for his offense. Pardoned for yelling, "Kill him," at police officers. And yet you expect hardworking police officers across the country to believe that you take law enforcement seriously. You could imagine the reaction of so many folks across the country hearing the chief law enforcement officer of the United States refuse to even condemn what that individual whom you've now hired did. But in any event, let's talk a little bit about some of the other divisions within the Department of Justice and what's happened over the last year. You're familiar with the Public Integrity section of the DOJ's criminal division. I think it's referred to as PIN. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know which presidential administration under which the PIN was first created?
I can tell you what administration that the weaponization was ended under.
I'll reclaim my time. This wasn't a trick question.
You don't get to
Madam Attorney
reclaim
General.
your time.
Madam Attorney General.
Because I don't like it.
Mr. Chairman, will you explain to the witness that he does reclaim his time?
Because I don't answer a question to your satisfaction?
Mr. Chairman. Madam Attorney General, the time belongs to the gentleman from Colorado.
The president under which PIN was created was Gerald Ford. It was created after Watergate.
Exactly.
I'm not asking a question, Madam Attorney General. The administration under which it was created was Gerald Ford. When you first started as the Attorney General of the United States, there were 35 people working in that office. There are now 2 people working in that office because you have gutted it. How many people work for the National Cryptocurrency Enforcement Team in the criminal division today?
Can I answer the question about PIN?
I've asked you a question. How many
You've
people
asked
work?
me a question, but you don't
How
want
many
the answer.
people work
I'm not
for the
gonna answer your
National
questions the way you
Cryptocurrency
want.
Enforcement Team? You won't answer how many
I'll
people?
answer PIN.
You.
PIN will not be
you know
weaponized.
What? You know what?
What's
Madam
funny
Attorney
about
General,
this?
I'll say to the chairman.
What's funny about
Mr. Chairman,
this?
you know what the answer is? And I think I
What's
understand
funny
why the
about
Attorney General
this?
does not want to answer the question. Because you eliminated the National Cryptocurrency Enforcement Team last year. So I understand why you don't want to tell the American people who works there.
Yeah, I
no one
understand
works
why
there
you don't want to
anymore,
talk about
Madam
Mohammed
Attorney
Solomon
General.
in
So,
your district.
In any event,
who
I would
murdered people.
Mr. Chairman, will you stop the clock so his time is not wasted by
I've
the
been
witness?
very generous with allowing extra time when we have these little disputes.
I understand.
You got the time, Mr. Goose.
I might as well ask the chairman these questions.
I'd be happy
because
to answer
what
some
is
of your
fun-
questions.
What's profound, the questions I've
Profound?
asked,
The crime in your
I've
district.
asked, Mr. Chairman, are not trick questions. They're not gotcha questions. They're actually basic questions about how the Department of Justice functions and the unwillingness of this Attorney General to answer them in good faith. When a member of Congress asks how many people work at the National Cryptocurrency Enforcement Team and the Attorney General refuses to answer it, it is not a coincidence. It's because she eliminated the team. Why? Because her boss, the President of the United States, is making money hand over fist, $1.4 billion over the course of the last year through cryptocurrency holdings. I think what is happening at the Department of Justice is a disgrace, Mr. Chairman, and I would urge you to gain control of this hearing. With that, I yield back the balance of my time.
Yeah. I would ask the gentleman, does he agree with the standing up of the Deputy Attorney General for dealing with fraud? That's something that's happened in this administration, first time. You talked about PIN. That happened with this Justice Department.
We're talking about this committee.
Mr. Chairman, had you answered the question, had the Attorney General answered the question in that way, perhaps this hearing would have some modicum of resembling something that has typically been fairly conventional, an oversight hearing of the Department of Justice.
The gentleman's
That is
time
not
has expired. The gentlelady from Wyoming is recognized for 5 minutes.
Attorney General Bondi, I want to express my gratitude to the President, you and your team for your continued efforts against extreme anti-energy policies taken by states and cities that serve only to increase costs on the American people. This is an issue of great concern for Congress as well as the consumers. At the behest of networks of non-governmental organizations and anti-growth activists, Democratic-controlled states and cities are enacting laws and pursuing coordinated lawsuits that would impose retroactive liability on energy producers for past global emissions based on speculative future climate change harms. The proponents of these plans call them climate superfund laws, but in reality, that is simply window dressing for taxes and fees imposed on consumers and businesses that don't even have a presence in these states or communities. But if you look at the billions of dollars they hope to gain from these efforts, the real goal here is to increase their already mismanaged state budgets by imposing fees on consumers and businesses in energy-producing states such as the state of Wyoming. I would describe this as the tobacco litigation on steroids. Vermont has enacted such a law, and another has recently gone into effect in New York. Similar laws are under consideration in a number of other states. Clearly, this problem is spreading. Would you agree that Congress has not authorized states to impose retroactive liability against energy producers and lawful carbon emissions?
Yes.
And would you also agree that protecting consumers is a core part of the DOJ's mission?
Absolutely.
Would you further agree that combating state policies that seek to hide and shift the true cost of programs like these onto consumers fits within your mission?
Yes.
So, Attorney General Bondi, fossil fuels are the foundation of the U.S. economy, and the recent winter storms underscored that gas, coal, and oil remain essential to grid reliability and heating our homes. Can you confirm that the DOJ is fully committed to using all available legal tools to stop these state and local level attacks on domestic energy production?
Congresswoman, we are committed to that, and so is the entire administration. We talk about that a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The President's April 2025 executive order directed the DOJ to identify and act against state laws that burden U.S. energy production. What concrete actions has the DOJ and the administration more broadly taken to carry out this directive?
Well, we filed 4 lawsuits. We're filing multiple lawsuits. Many things are pending within this office to carry that out.
Okay. States continue to invent new causes of action to pursue state climate lawfare, as is evidenced by Michigan's recent novel claim related to antitrust violations. The city of Boulder, Colorado has also filed such a lawsuit, despite refusing my challenge that they actually forego the use of fossil fuels if they disagree with them so much. Does the Department of Justice agree that these novel approaches require a federal response, and will the department pursue such an approach?
Yes, Congresswoman, and we'd be happy to talk to you more about that.
Wonderful,
Yes.
thank you. Multiple climate lawsuits are now advancing toward trial, even in states that rely on those energy forms to provide heat and electricity for their citizens. In fact, in any community, they all rely upon fossil fuels in some fashion. Is the department actively considering intervention to protect federal supremacy over interstate emissions and energy policy?
Yes, we'd be happy to discuss that with you.
Thank you. And clearly this is an area in which Congress has a role to play. To that end, I'm working with my colleagues in both the House and Senate to craft legislation tackling both these state laws and the lawsuits that could destroy energy affordability for consumers. To that end, are there any authorities or tools that DOJ and the administration don't currently have at their disposal that would be helpful in that effort that Congress could adopt?
Well, we work with multiple agencies throughout the administration, but I'd be happy to talk to you about that more.
Wonderful,
Yes.
thank you. I appreciate your effort in this regard.
And may I have 20
Please.
seconds of your time
Please.
before to address something?
Yes.
Thank you. Your colleague, Senator Neguse, didn't want to talk about crypto because he said I was a disgrace talking about crypto because he didn't want to talk about the tremendous crime in his jurisdiction. He voted no on preventing violence against women by illegal aliens. Yet, on June 1st, 2025, Mohammed Solomon attacked members of the group Run for Their Lives in Boulder, Colorado, where an 82-year-old woman sustained burns on over half of her body and eventually died from her injuries.
I believe that she was a Holocaust survivor.
She was.
The time the gentlelady has expired, the gentlelady yields back, and the gentlelady from Georgia is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Bondi, as the Florida Attorney General, attorneys from your office handled the appeal of my son, Jordan Davis's murder, which was denied. As a result of the efforts of those attorneys under your watch, the court actually upheld the life sentence for a man who used prejudice as his defense for murdering my son and scarring his friends for life. Attorneys from your office, under your management, worked hard to remove a dangerous man from the community who terrorized innocent people like my son and his friends. The compassion and respect that my family received throughout that ordeal were critical in helping us keep faith in the rule of law and justice. Based on my experiences, I have seen how strong victim services, sustained investigations, and well-supported prosecutors can make a meaningful difference in the lives of families who are grieving and suffering. Ms. Bondi, just yes or no, would you agree that government officials should be respectful and supportive of victims' families as they mourn?
First, Congresswoman, thank you for talking about that, and I'm so very sorry for what happened to your family.
Thank you.
And yes, I agree with that with all victims, including the ones sitting behind us today. I absolutely do. And
Okay.
also, thank you for voting yes on the Lake and Riley Act.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay, so Your answer is why the recent treatment of families in Minnesota raises really serious concerns for me. Because shortly after Mr. Alex Preddy was murdered, administration officials referred to him as an assassin and called Mr. Preddy the definition of domestic terrorism. They also lied about Mr. Preddy holding a gun and threatening officers. After Ms. Renee Good was murdered by ICE officials in Minneapolis, administration officials also accused her of being a domestic terrorist and investigated her wife in a clear act of retaliation. The statement Mr. Preddy's mother made after the murder resonated with me more than you'll ever imagine. She said that, and I'm quoting, "The sickening lies told about our son by the administration are reprehensible and disgusting," end quote. And I assure you, I know how it feels to hear lies that are told to justify the taking of someone's son. They were used by my son's murderer as a defense, and those lies still affect me today. He was called a thug, and he was called a gangbanger, and the attorneys from your office actually defended my son's name, his memory, and defended his honor. I'm certain that Mr. Preddy's mother watched videos of her son, Alex, an ICU nurse at the VA hospital, using his phone to record federal agents. She also watched him getting pepper sprayed, kicked, hit in the head, and surrounded by at least 7 agents before having his gun removed from his waistband, which he legally carried. And she watched seconds later as 2 of those agents shot her son Alex at least 10 times. Administration was quick to spew an incorrect narrative and call him so many things that they wanted us to ignore the truth that we actually saw with our own eyes. Ms. Bondi, will you denounce the statements that were made to tarnish the names of Alex Preddy and Renee Good, and will you protect their names like those attorneys back in Florida under your watch protected my son's name?
What I will say is we are looking at everything to shed light on what happened that day, and it is an ongoing and active investigation. Both of those cases, and I assure you they will be investigated.
Investigating, we understand that, but will you do everything in your power, as you have done for my case, as you are asked to do, as you've sworn an oath to do? It is your responsibility to make sure that you are following the rule of law. Those families in Minnesota, they deserve the same respect. They deserve a full investigation, which you have not even begun to do yet. So what are you saying, is that they don't deserve any respect for a full investigation into their murders?
Well,
that is
not
incompetence on your behalf.
Well, that is
the American
not accurate.
people do deserve better. Non-commitment to defending the rule of law is what we see from you.
I
will
told you we
always
were
stand up for
investigating.
survivors, and I heard you say earlier when you told us that you will fight for them as well. And based on the information before us, these families have not received the same commitment to investigate what happened to their loved ones, nor have they received the respect that I would expect from the nation's top law enforcement officer. Investigations have been slow-walked, they've been canceled, and the special agent assigned to Renee Good's investigation resigned following pressure from your officials to reclassify Ms. Good's case.
Time of the gentle
for
lady.
families seeking answers and accountability. The withdrawal of investigative resources is simply unacceptable.
Has expired. The gentle lady yields back. The gentleman from California is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Attorney General, I get the sense that we've lost a little perspective here. The most fundamental responsibility of government is to protect the lives and property of its citizens. Now, you cited some crime figures in your opening statement, and I wonder if you could repeat them, because I think it's one of the most extraordinary achievements of the Department of Justice in our history. And I don't think some of my colleagues heard you clearly.
Thank you, Congressman. And would you mind if I address something that
Go right
Congresswoman McBath wouldn't let me address first?
Go right ahead.
The reason that she wants to continue to talk about Minnesota, which we will all day long, is she doesn't want to talk about her own jurisdiction in Atlanta, because she doesn't want to talk about Christopher Welcher, who traveled across state lines to try to meet, and nothing's funny about this, to meet and molest a 14-year-old girl in Georgia. That's why they're watching the clock, the American people should know, for the second it runs out, because they don't want to address anything in their jurisdiction. They're elected to represent people in their jurisdiction. We prosecuted illegal aliens who ran a large-scale meth operation in the Atlanta metro area.
You understand we don't prosecute, right, Ms. Bondi?
Madam Attorney General.
On the law,
I'm sorry, thank you.
Mr. McClintock.
So yes, the statistics I spoke of earlier, Congressman, under the leadership of the FBI, historic work has been done. A drop 20% in the nationwide murder rate in 2025. Least murders in our country since 1900, and that is to the work because of the credit of Donald Trump.
It's not just homicides, is it? It's also other violent crimes, robbery. Could you go through that list real quick?
Yes, Congressman. 100% increase in violent crime arrest in 2025 compared to 2024.
And what's that done to the violent crime rate in the country?
It's plummeting. 1,800 gangs.
Wait a second. Do you mean to honestly tell us, and you're under oath, that if we take violent criminals off the streets, we end up with less crime?
I certainly hope so, Congressman, and that's our goal, and that's
an extraordinary concept, and I'm afraid it may be lost on some of our Democratic colleagues. I look at these numbers, and they're absolutely staggering. It didn't happen by accident. It happened because of specific policies that you've implemented this year. And you mentioned a few of them. Would you continue?
Over 6,000 child victims located, 22% increase. Over 1,700 child predators arrested, 10% increase. Over 300 human traffickers arrested. Let me jump down to DEA right now. That was just FBI. Under Terry Cole's leadership, and I talk to these people almost daily, our directors, and the amazing work that they're doing in all of your jurisdictions on the left and the right, working together to take drugs off our streets.
Right, and I assume that our Democratic colleagues, some of whom represent some of our most crime-plagued cities and communities, have thanked you for this extraordinary accomplishment.
Thank you, Congressman. We've seized more than 9,800 kilos of fentanyl and 47 million fentanyl pills. That affects every single person in this room. It doesn't matter what political party you are. Everyone in this room knows someone who's died from fentanyl. A parent, a child, a sister, a brother, a friend, a neighbor, a relative. Everyone here knows someone who has been impacted by that. That is the common ground that I wish we could find to work together in this country, to take these drugs off the streets. And someone nodded with vapes.
Well, in your opening statement, you said this historic success in protecting the lives and property of Americans has occurred when local governments have cooperated with you.
Yes.
Let me ask you, what are the greatest impediments you're facing in bringing down crime across the country?
Well, when local governments, of course, do not cooperate with us, and that's where criminals flee, in jurisdictions where they know they will be protected by local governments. And this is all about working together, and we have shown that in what we did in D.C., what we're doing in Memphis, working together with Democrat mayors in these cities, right here in D.C.
And very quickly, if you could tell us about the Safe Cities program and give us your read on what cities that avail themselves of this program can expect?
Yes, so far, of course, we've been working in Washington, D.C., right here to do everything we can, working hand in hand with the mayor, with Metro PD, to keep everyone safe in D.C., and it's been a tremendous effort. And now we're in Memphis, working with the mayor in Memphis, as we talked about earlier, doing everything we can. These are iconic cities in our country, and we want to help every city in this country who wants and asks for President Trump's help to make America safe again.
Gentlemen,
Mr. Chair, I have, you see.
let the record show that Democrat was applauding the Attorney General's answer there. A unanimous consent?
Yes, please.
All right, the gentlelady is recognized.
Mr. Chair, I have a few unanimous consent requests. I would like to submit into the record this New York Times article titled "Alex Pretty's Friends and Family Denounce Sickening Lies About His Life." I also would like to submit this Daily Mail exclusive interview with Vice President J.D. Vance titled "J.D. Vance Refuses to Apologize to Alex Pretty's Family After Spreading ICE Assassin Claim." One more. My last submission request is a New York Times article titled "FBI Agent Who Tried to Investigate ICE Officer in Shooting Resigns."
Without objection.
Thank you.
The chair now recognizes the gentlelady from North Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Attorney General Bondi, I think you and pretty much everybody else here and throughout the country believes that convicted sex offenders don't deserve special treatment or privileges in prison. And yet Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein's co-conspirator, received perk after perk in prison. In July, she had a 2-day interview with your deputy and President Trump's former defense attorney, Todd Blanche. Just days after that, Maxwell was transferred from a federal correctional institution in Florida to a minimum security camp in Texas, which she, as a sex offender, would normally be ineligible for. At this new facility, as the ranking member talked about, and by the way, it's nicknamed Club Fed, we've heard reports that she's been afforded special privileges: puppy time, private workouts, personal mail, secretarial services. Attorney General Bondi, does a convicted sex offender like Ghislaine Maxwell deserve special treatment and privileges in prison? Yes or no?
Let me be crystal clear on this. No. And
Thank you.
let me keep going. No, let me keep going.
Perfect. Well, I
did not know she was being transferred.
I asked you yes or no.
She was not transferred to a lower
Mr. Chairman,
level.
please stop the clock and remind the witness of the rules. One rule she needs to understand here.
And I'm glad that we're agreeing. So when we're agreeing, we can move on to some other things. But I want you to know that every time she does get these perks, and it's been publicly reported, that the folks she's abused, the survivors who are sitting here, they see themselves as being denied justice. They feel re-traumatized. And I'm glad that we agree on that. But she should not be in that prison. And she needs to be moved back to a maximum security prison as soon as possible. But what she has told another committee here is that she won't cooperate with them unless she gets clemency from Donald Trump. It's just crazy to consider that she can be wielding this kind of influence within the administration. But that begs the question: who ordered her to be transferred to the minimum security prison that she was ineligible for? Who signed off on the special privileges? Was it Mr. Blanche? Was it one of your other subordinates? So please, can you tell us who sent her there, since you don't agree she should be there?
I said I do not agree she should receive special treatment. She was transferred, I learned after the fact, to the same level facility, and that is a question for the Bureau of Prisons. I was not involved in that at all. The same level facility, I don't know why, but you know, instead of talking about Ghislaine Maxwell, who hopefully will die in prison, you should be talking about Irina Zarutska.
I have a couple
who
of
died
other
on a subway.
Right, and I absolutely...
You don't talk about that.
I have been talking about it and actually helping with these issues. But we're going to move back to you.
I bet we are.
Yes, of course, because you're here to testify. That's what the whole point of this endeavor is. So of course we're moving back to you. It is all about you. So as we've heard, she took the fifth in response to every single question in that committee hearing. And her lawyer dangled the offer of clemency. Should Donald Trump pardon or commute her sentence? Should she be released from prison, yes or no? You said you hope she dies there, so I'm hoping the answer is no.
I already answered that question.
Good. I'm very glad. I really like this bipartisan agreement about what should happen.
Well, when it agrees with you, but you don't want to talk about Irina Zarutska. You don't want to talk about
I talk about
murdered
her all
by
the
a
time,
violent crime
but
offender
I am not
in
here
your
to
jurisdiction.
testify before Congress. You are. That is your job today.
You are
That's what you're getting paid
obsessed
for.
with attack.
I want you to know that your own DOJ employee, he's recently been demoted and had some other problems, advises on pardons. Do you think he will be advising Mr. Trump on any kind of clemency or pardon for Ghislaine Maxwell?
I'm not going to speculate, and you couldn't even identify properly. That's why you don't want to talk about Irina Zarutska. You couldn't properly identify her relative.
I absolutely
it's embarrassing.
Have been, and her family, by the way, appreciates all of the condolences, all of the help, everything that our law enforcement in North Carolina has been doing to help her family. Her family feels well treated. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Gentleman from California is recognized.
I'd ask unanimous consent to enter into the record an article by former Attorney General William P. Barr entitled, "Why Pam Bondi Didn't Publish All the Epstein Files in 30 Days." The answer is simple. It was not possible, from the Wall Street Journal.
Well said. Without objection, the gentlelady from Florida is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Madam, I'm sorry. Yes. May I respond 20 seconds to something that Congresswoman Ross said?
Go right ahead.
Thank you. She also opposed a sex offender registry as head of North Carolina ACLU. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Attorney General. And I'd like to pick up where you left off a moment ago, because we convene here today as a committee for the stated purpose of conducting oversight of the Department of Justice. And so it's critical for us to focus first on the mission of the department and assess your success in discharging it. So the mission of the department is to enforce federal law, defend the rule of law, and protect the American people from violent crime, terrorism, drug trafficking, fraud, and exploitation, to promote public safety. And what we have heard today unequivocally is that President Trump's Department of Justice, under your leadership, Attorney General Bondi, is doing exactly that. Just a moment ago, you shared with us some incredible statistics that the United States, under your leadership, has achieved the lowest murder rate in 125 years. That in the first year of this administration, murder is down 21%, robbery is down 23%, carjacking down 43%, and gun assault down 22%. That is what public safety looks like. Under your leadership and that of President Trump, you've located more than 6,000 child victims of trafficking and exploitation, arrested 1,700 child predators, and apprehended more than 300 human traffickers. Significant increases. And those aren't just statistics. Those are precious lives that your department and the men and women of federal law enforcement have saved. Madam Attorney General, you've mentioned a couple of specific criminal trends during this hearing that I'd like to discuss with you further, because one of our important roles in Congress is making sure that our laws and our law enforcement stay ahead of predators as technology evolves. I lead legislation in the House, along with bipartisan co-sponsors on this committee, to make sextortion a clearly defined criminal offense. We actually passed that out of the House of Representatives. We have a bill to promote Operation Renewed Hope to help rescue more child victims, and the Defiance Act to provide legal recourse to victims of deepfake AI intimate images. I would love to hear your perspective and what you are seeing related to these technology-based criminal trends, sextortion and AI deepfakes. What are you seeing at the Department of Justice, and why do you believe that efforts to combat these types of crimes are important?
Sextortion, and thank you for supporting that, Congresswoman. I think that was a bipartisan effort, actually. I think many of you on both sides of the aisle supported that. Thank you for that. You know, as a career prosecutor, it's horrible seeing that, and seeing that young women and often young boys have been exploited with sextortion. And I see, thank you, both sides of the aisle nodding on that. It's horrific. The suicide rates go up. And that's why we have to do everything in our power to protect not only young girls adult women, boys and men from sextortion, because it is happening and we're doing everything in our power, thanks to your legislation, all of you, to stop that.
I'd like to hear a little bit more about some of the Department of Justice programs like Project Safe Childhood and the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Forces, partnerships that bring together federal, state, and local law enforcement. Sometimes the work between those law enforcement groups together really creates some incredibly powerful outcomes and some great success stories. I know you, as Florida's Attorney General, had a tremendous amount of leadership in our state trying to make sure we were taking care of children, also the elderly, protecting them from fraud, ending drug trafficking. Tell us a little bit about some of those departments within DOJ.
Yeah, when you talked about Project Safe Neighborhoods, we've done a lot of that in Florida when I was state AG, and actually back when I was a state prosecutor prior to being Attorney General. That is so important. I feel like what we've been doing in DC too, with the Take Back DC and Make DC Safe Again, is similar to that. Going into the neighborhoods, working with the community, seeing law enforcement officers out there playing basketball with kids who live in the neighborhood. It's pretty remarkable what we've seen firsthand. Citizens in Memphis saying that they appreciate, they can walk outdoors now and they feel safe. People coming up thanking law enforcement and working hand in hand with them. We will continue all of these programs and working jointly with both sides of the aisle to keep our families safe.
Thank you for that, Madam Attorney General. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Gentleman from Tennessee is recognized.
Thank you. I'd like to introduce for the record a letter to Director Gabbard from Mr. Warner and Mr. Himes, and a letter of response from her to them about who invited her to Atlanta, and a copy of the search warrant. And I'd also like to just make clear for the record, the reason people in Memphis weren't going out was because the ice was on the ground and we were afraid we'd fall. But other than that, we go out all the time.
Gentlemen, without objection, there's unanimous consent. The gentlelady from Vermont is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Attorney General Bondi, according to your department, a child is sexually abused in the United States every 9 minutes, and the vast majority of survivors never get justice. And that's one of the reasons why I think the Epstein case has resonated so deeply with so many Americans. And the other reason, I think, is because it has revealed a two-tiered system of justice. And the powerful are protected and the survivors rarely get any accountability. And the Epstein files contain evidence of a multi-decade international criminal conspiracy involving some of the wealthiest and the most powerful people in the world. There's evidence of financial crimes, political corruption, sex trafficking, and of course, horrible sexual abuse. And I want to remind everybody, this isn't a game. These are real people, people who have suffered, who are sitting here with us today, and they deserve answers, and they deserve accountability. And I'm here to try to get some for them. Now, I've seen some of the unredacted Epstein files, and obviously, as you know, President Trump's name is all over them, but so are the names of other senior Trump officials: Howard Lutnick, Secretary of Commerce; John Phelan, the Secretary of the Navy; and Stephen Feinberg, the Deputy Secretary of Defense. These men were appointed by President Trump to senior positions in his administration. All of them have clear and confirmed ties to Jeffrey Epstein. Attorney General Bondi, yes or no, has the Justice Department asked Secretary Lutnick about his ties to Epstein?
Excuse me. Secretary Lutnick has addressed those ties himself.
I'm asking you, has the Justice Department specifically asked Secretary Lutnick about his ties to Jeffrey Epstein?
He has addressed those ties himself.
Has the DOJ asked Secretary Phelan about his ties to Jeffrey Epstein?
I don't know whether he has addressed those or not.
Has the Deputy Secretary Feinberg talked to the Department of Justice about his ties to Jeffrey Epstein? Yes or no? Has the Department of Justice talked to Deputy Secretary Feinberg about his ties to Jeffrey Epstein, which are clearly spelled out in the files? It's a very simple question. It's not a trick question. I'm just asking you.
Yeah, I'm stunned that you want to continue talking about.
Oh my gosh.
Epstein
Okay,
instead
I'm
of a Border
reclaiming my
Patrol
time. I'm
agent
asking
murder.
you not a trick question, a simple question. Okay, so what is clear is we have evidence.
Do you know who Chris Malin is?
We have evidence that 3 senior officials within the Trump administration have ties to Jeffrey Epstein. And what I
does
can
ties
conclude,
mean?
I can conclude
What does
from what
ties
you are
mean?
saying that you have not talked to them.
What does ties mean? Can
I
you
think
define
Americans would be shocked to learn that you are not interested in talking with these officials who have ties to Jeffrey Epstein.
What does
across
ties
the
mean?
world,
Can you define that?
across the world,
Can you
prominent
define
men
ties?
who've been
Time
exposed
belongs to the
in the files have resigned their jobs in disgrace, and that's a good first start. And that same
Disgrace is
standard,
not saying the word
this
Chris
same
Malin.
standard should apply here. And Americans want accountability.
Who is Chris Malin?
Was the president
he?
aware? Please stop talking. It is not your time to ask
Who was he?
questions. It is not your time. I'm reclaiming my time, Mr. Chair.
One second.
Time belongs to the gentlelady from Vermont.
Was the president aware of Secretary Lutnick's ties to Epstein when he chose him to lead the Department of Commerce? Was he aware?
Chris Malin was a Border Patrol agent.
Okay, so I'm going to conclude that the president, in fact, did know about his ties because he was the next door neighbor.
Shame on you.
Oh, for goodness sakes,
You're
this
from
is
a tiny,
pathetic. This
beautiful
is
state.
pathetic, Mr.
Committee will
Chair.
be in order.
I am not asking trick questions here.
You
The
got your
American
5
people
minutes.
have a right to know the answers to this. These are senior officials in the Trump administration. This is not a game, Secretary.
I'm Attorney General.
My apologies, I couldn't tell. By 2008, we knew that Epstein was a convicted sexual abuser. And we now know that Lutnick went to Epstein's Island in 2012. How was that not a deal breaker for the president? And why aren't you asking questions of the Commerce Secretary about what he saw when he was at the island, which he lied about not ever going to? Why are you not asking these questions? And I see that my time is almost expired, so I will say this. Do the right thing, Attorney General. Meet with the survivors. They have been asking for a year. Meet with the survivors. Do the right thing. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. The gentleman from South Carolina is recognized for 5 minutes.
May I have 20 seconds of his time?
So that'll be up to the gentleman, but.
Absolutely, Madam.
Thank you. Thank you. I was curious if you, Congresswoman, asked Bill Clinton that. Didn't see one tweet, not one. I didn't see one tweet when Joe Biden was in office about Bill Clinton. Didn't ask Merrick Garland anything about Epstein, not once. When he was
weak sauce.
And also, I want the record to reflect that, you know, with this anti-Semitic culture right now, she voted against a resolution condemning.
Oh,
is Jewish. I just want to be clear.
Do you want to go there, Attorney General? Or do you want to go there? Are you serious? Talking about anti-Semitism to a woman who lost her grandfather in the Holocaust?
I reclaim my time.
Really?
The committee will be in order.
Talk to Jared Wise about anti-Semitism.
The ranking member knows that.
Can I get like 30 seconds back, you know?
Yeah, I've been.
I
I think the whole committee knows. I've been very generous
thank
in
you.
making sure everyone gets their 5 minutes in the same.
Attorney General, I'm going to talk about sanctuary cities for a second, which limit the federal government's ability to enforce immigration law. They're kind of a new thing that Democrat jurisdictions are doing. They're in violation of federal law. During President Trump's first term, he rightly targeted sanctuary jurisdictions to try to force them to cooperate with federal immigration law. Federal immigration law, mind you, that was voted on in 1996, most recently, in a bipartisan Congress, signed by a Democrat president. But they are in violation of that law. These states and jurisdictions feel entitled to certain grants, of course. Y'all are combating that. Do sanctuary policies limit the federal government's ability to accurately estimate how many criminal illegals are in the country?
Yes.
Thank you. This means that the number of illegals could be higher, probably higher. Does this hurt the federal government's ability to carry out immigration laws designed by Congress?
Yes, Congressman.
In your opinion, do you believe that the Biden-Harris administration and Democrat pro-sanctuary policies make our communities safer
And for the American taxpayer, do sanctuary policies make our communities safer?
No, Congressman.
I want to do a brief video to highlight sanctuary cities. So what's strange to me, if you look at this board behind me, in New York, there are 7,000 criminal illegal aliens since January 20th of last year that have been released into the public because New York is not honoring detainers requested by ICE. California, similarly, has released 4,500 criminal illegal aliens. There are 33,000 under detainer in California alone. And of the people released, I think it's remarkable that those released in New York, 29 homicides, 2,500 assaults, almost 200 burglaries. These are people that are released into our community by these states that refuse to cooperate. Last August, Michael Jordan Castellano Fonseca, a criminal illegal alien with ties to Tren de Agua, shot 2 people in front of 5 children in the sanctuary state of Colorado. DHS lodged a detainer on him. He's awaiting trial, but the question is whether Colorado's sanctuary policies will prevent him from being removed from the country. Yes or no? Do you think that sanctuary jurisdictions, if they cooperated with ICE, those illegals in custody could be transferred to ICE properly instead of being held in taxpayer-funded jails and then released into our community?
Yes, Congressman.
Wouldn't it be more efficient and safer then if Democrats simply cooperated with the federal government, these sanctuary jurisdictions cooperated with the federal government and honored ICE detainers? And why? Why do you think?
Of course, because so many criminals are running to sanctuary jurisdictions. Many of your colleagues across the aisle who we've seen speaking today about Epstein don't want to talk about the illegal criminals in their own jurisdiction for that reason. And yes, we need to do everything we can to work together to make America safer, and they're not doing that.
This is not a partisan issue. People want to feel safe in their communities. Nobody wants a criminal illegal alien released into the street. I think that the thing that maybe the American people don't quite understand is that when you do not honor a detainer, as we've seen, an illegal is released into the public, and now it's up to ICE to maybe apprehend them, rather than behind the courtroom passing them off from one law enforcement to the next. Is that true?
Absolutely.
What do you think what is the Department of Justice doing right now to combat sanctuary policies in our country?
We're doing everything in our power, obviously, to combat that. Donald Trump is doing everything he can because we are going to make America safe. We are going to get illegal criminal aliens out of this country. We're going to get the gangs out, TDA, MS-13, all of the gangs in this country. We're going to get the drug dealers out and the drugs, and that's what we've been fighting to do. And I wish we could do it on a bipartisan basis, but they just can't do it.
And the decrease in numbers speak for themselves. Thank you for your work.
Gentleman's time
Mr.
is...
Chairman, we have some UCs, if that's okay.
That is okay.
Mr. Cohen.
Thank you. You see on the National Institute of Justice's study on undocumented immigrants having an offender rate lower than U.S.-born citizens. I'd like to enter this in the record from 2024.
Without objection.
And I have several myself, Mr. Chairman. The Guardian, January 26, 2026, why is Trump granting clemency to convicted fraudsters?
Objection.
January 20, 2026, NBC, Trump's pardons forgive financial crimes that came with hundreds of millions of dollars in punishment.
Objection.
Washington Post, December 19, 2025, Trump's pardons wipe out payments to defrauded victims.
Without objection.
And finally, May 30th, 2024, Trump found guilty by Manhattan jury on 34 felony counts of fraud.
Without objection. The gentleman from Illinois is recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. Attorney General Bondi, glad you finally made it here after hiding for 4 months from this committee. I understand why you're hiding from us.
Chairman?
You're one of the worst attorney generals in our history and an instrument of Donald Trump's lawless authoritarian agenda, and I'm glad the American people are seeing who you are, how you act, and the lack of good values. You weaponize the Department of Justice to target immigrants, working families, and anyone that Trump deems an enemy of the state. all to protect real powerful criminals, including in your administration. My Democratic colleagues have focused on your cover-up of the Epstein files and your passion for protecting pedophiles and child traffickers. That alone is grounds for impeachment. But there's so much more to your corrupt tenure as Attorney General. You directed prosecutors to investigate elected officials in welcoming jurisdictions, and you got thrown out of court when you sued Chicago, Cook County, and Illinois. You directed prosecutors to prioritize low-level immigration cases while gutting enforcement against corporate criminals and public corruption. You revived draconian
You're
law
talking
of
about public corruption to me?
1798,
Whoa.
which should be repealed to illegally send people to a torture prison in El Salvador. You fired over 100 immigration judges, including the assistant chief immigration judge in Chicago, without cause, and installed unqualified military judges whom you instructed to deny asylum in violation of the law. You prosecute the president's enemies like Jim Comey and Tish James while giving impunity to federal agents who are murdering and brutalizing and terrorizing constituents, including in Chicagoland, in my neighborhood. I saw it last year firsthand. You and Kash Patel covered up the murder of Silverio Villegas Gonzalez in my district by ICE agents. You tried to investigate Renee Good instead of the ICE agent who murdered her, and you tried to cover up the murder of Alex Peretti by CBP agents. You bring fake charges against protesters like the Broadview Six and Marimar Martinez, whom your administration labeled a domestic terrorist. This is the Montessori teacher who lives in my district, while protecting thugs who terrorize us and DHS authority. That's what you do. Protect and enable the criminals who are plundering our society and destroying what's left of democracy and the rule of law. Epstein accomplices, mass DHS thugs, corporate criminals, Tom Homan, Eric Adams, insurrectionists, the list goes on. And you talk about fighting crime, but you protect any criminal who helps you and Trump turn our country into an authoritarian gangster state. And after all this, nobody supports you. I'm not talking about Democrats. I'm talking about conservative judges who are condemning the rampant lawlessness at DOJ under your leadership. Your prosecutors are quitting in droves over being forced to prosecute low-level immigration cases, including in Chicagoland. Your MAGA base despises you because you're covering up the Epstein file. How ironic. And even your own boss has repeatedly complained to your staff about you, calling you weak and ineffective. Weak and ineffective. That's what Donald Trump thinks of you already. You will not win, however. Chicagoland rejects you. The American people reject you. Our communities have demonstrated our strength and resilience in the face of cruelty and cowardice. Democrats must impeach and remove lawless officials like you and Kristi Noem and impose accountability for every criminal action. But you can spare yourself more humiliation. Resign now and submit yourself to accountability by the American people. Mr. Chairman, before I yield back, I ask unanimous consent to submit for the record this Wall Street Journal article dated January 12, 2026, entitled, "Trump has complained about Pam Bondi repeatedly to aides." Thank you, and I yield back.
Objection. Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
I thank the chairman.
May I have 20 seconds, please?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Let's hear the opposition research.
Thank you. That's absolutely right, that they're not running for, he's not running for office again because, well, I don't know why you're not running for office again, but after the filing deadline, you publicly announced you would not run when your chief of staff, Patty Garcia, announced and took your seat.
That's
I
a
believe
state matter.
Democrats
That
got
isn't a
angry
federal
about
matter.
that
You
as
should
well.
investigate crimes.
I believe
Time
Democrats
belongs- time
got
belongs-
angry
you should
about that as
investigate
Time belongs to the gentleman
violations
from
of the law.
Texas. The time belongs to the gentleman from Texas.
And a little flexibility in the time. I appreciate the chairman. Madam Attorney General, am I correct that under your leadership, the Department of Justice has prosecuted cases of non-citizen voting? So it's false, as some of my Democratic colleagues have claimed, that it doesn't happen.
Yes.
I ask that today because we're voting on the Save America Act today to enact common sense policies to ensure only American citizens vote in American elections and enact federal voter ID laws. But it's true, for example, that in just this month, a federal grand jury in Newark indicted 2 men with illegally voting in federal election and making false statements. Mohammed Muzammil and Mohammed Shakil were non-citizens at the time they registered to vote. This happens, it happens regularly, and you're prosecuting those crimes, correct?
Yes.
But does that prosecution of those criminals overturn their previously cast votes?
That's all pending.
But it does not overturn votes that they've cast, right? So passing the Save
no,
America
Congressman.
Act would help deal with that problem.
Yes, Congressman.
Second question. As Attorney General, you're in charge of the Executive Office of Immigration Review, correct?
Yes, Congressman.
The Biden-Mayorkas regime caused the immigration court case backlog to explode, correct?
Explode.
Does that sound about right that in September of 2020, 4 months before President Biden took office, there was a backlog of 1.5 million cases, but by the time President Biden left office, the backlog reached nearly 4.2 million cases?
It sounds about right, but I don't have the exact numbers.
It would be accurate to say that most individuals who file for asylum have a meritless or fraudulent claim?
Most. I don't have the numbers.
Oh, so does it sound correct that of the asylum cases adjudicated in FY 2023 under the Biden regime, that only 14% resulted in an asylum grant and only 12% in fiscal year 2024? Does that sound correct?
It sounds correct. I'm sorry, I don't have the numbers.
Could you get that information to us to
Yes,
verify
absolutely.
that data?
I'll get all that information to you.
Under the Trump administration, immigration judges complete an average of 65,000 cases per month, the highest average completion rate in at least a decade. Does that sound correct?
That sounds correct.
Ms. Bondi, how many new cases under EOIR received in fiscal year 2025 have you all had? And of those, what percentage have been granted asylum? Do you know?
I can try to get you those numbers. I thought I had those.
That'd be great, because my question is whether President Trump's decision to pause asylum in the wake of the shooting of a National Guardsman by an Afghani here in Washington, D.C., in the nation's capital, helped to stop the backlog in your office. Does that sound correct?
Yes, Congressman.
My point being that the leadership of this administration is ending the backlog, reducing the backlog, making sure that we don't have fraudulent asylum claims clogging it, and keeping Americans safe. Is that correct?
Yes, Congressman.
So a couple other quick questions on another important topic that has been raised by colleagues on both sides of the aisle with respect to the Epstein case. A few questions. One, Jeffrey Epstein was charged in July 2019 for sex trafficking under the Trump administration in his first term. Is that correct?
Yes, Congressman.
And that Ghislaine Maxwell was charged in 2020 also under the Trump administration, correct?
Yes, Congressman.
So it is safe to say that the administration led on that issue and that there was silence in the previous administration. Is that correct?
Yes, Congressman. Almost complete silence from everyone who's been trying to still talk about Epstein. They didn't say a word under the Biden administration. Nothing.
And I want to make one other point and then another question, though, that is important. I want to make one observation, that is that we've heard the information today, which is troubling, that Jane Doe's, that victims' information was made public and was unredacted in the files that were released on Friday. So my question is, some of us had argued when we were dealing with the discharge petition in Congress that when Congress inserted itself into the process, that we needed to be very careful to ensure that we were protecting victims. So a question that is both, I just want to make that clear that some of us were fighting for that here and we didn't get a chance to amend it or change it. So that was concerning. But a question a little more pointed, I have to say, is why, though, were the victims' names released that shouldn't have been? That there were names in the files, that these Jane Does, that their names shouldn't have been made public when there were some accusers whose names were redacted? That's question one. Mm-hmm. And question two was that Ghislaine Maxwell was put in jail for trafficking minors. Rightly so, and you properly said here at this table, you hope she dies in jail. Well, I want to know, will anyone besides her or Epstein, which I congratulate President Trump's previous administration and this Department of Justice for continuing all of that, but that they were indicted, but will anyone else be indicted and prosecuted under this, given the information that's in front of us? So two questions.
Thank you for letting me answer that. They didn't want to hear my answer on the other side. Yes, given the tight time frame of 30 days, I believe we got everything released within a little over 60 days. I'm talking as fast as I can. My time is up. We did the best we could immediately. If everyone's been coming to view the documents, if someone's name should not have been redacted, we're releasing it. If someone's name was redacted, we said right away, was not redacted and should have been, meaning a victim. We went back and redacted it. We're doing everything we can based on the tight time frame and over 3 million pages that we released that Donald Trump signed for pure transparency. Second, what was your second question?
About whether another individual will be indicted.
Oh, absolutely.
And
Thank you for asking that. And they never wanted to hear the answer to that. We have pending investigations in our office.
Time of the gentleman has expired. Unanimous consent request from the gentleman from Pennsylvania.
Thank you. I have several UCs as receipts. I'd like to have unanimous consent to introduce the National Security Presidential Memorandum 7, dated September 25th, 25.
Without objection.
The Bondi Department of Justice memo dated December 4th, 2025.
Without objection.
An article from Newsweek entitled DOJ Deletes Study Alleging Rise in Far-Right Terrorism, dated September 18th, 2025.
Without objection.
Notice article from October 3rd, 2025. Trump's directive on organized political violence could lead to increased surveillance of his critics.
Without objection.
Washington Post article, September 25th, 2025. Trump targets domestic terrorists, but only mentions the radical left.
Without objection.
Idaho Capital Sun, October 18th, 2025. Rest easy, Idahoans. The No King demonstrators are American patriots.
Without objection.
Attacks on freedom of speech, what nonprofits need to know, published by the National Council of Nonprofits, the largest network of nonprofits in America.
Without objection.
The Freedom from Religious Foundation warns that Bondi memo weaponizes federal law enforcement against non-Christians and dissenting viewpoints.
Without objection.
A Ken Klipperstein blog from January 28th, 26, ICE's secret watch lists of Americans.
Without objection.
And an Intercept article from February 2nd, 26, Trump calls his enemies terrorists. Does that mean he can kill them?
Without objection. The gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Attorney General Bondi.
Good afternoon.
Oh, you're right. Good afternoon. It's been a long day. I wrote this morning. We've known each other a long time, and I'll always be appreciative for your assistance when you were Attorney General in Florida after the shooting at my high school at Marjory Stoneman Douglas in my hometown of Parkland when we passed a bipartisan bill, the Marjory Stoneman Douglas School Safety Act, which was the largest policy response to a school shooting in American history. Your department also prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law a constituent of mine and former felon that had plans to kill me when he was picked up by law enforcement after he was target practicing in his backyard with 2 rifles, a scope, a silencer, 3,000 rounds of ammunition, an anti-Semitic manifesto. My name was the only name on their target list, and my kids found out about this from their friends at school. So thank you. However, the most transparent administration in American history. Before Trump, we didn't know the word transparency, apparently. It's been 12 months since you gave Republican influencers part 1 of the Epstein files. You said the list was on your desk. Then a memo came out and said that there was no list. Phase 2 of the binders never happened. The President of the United States says the Epstein thing is a hoax. He blasts his own base for wanting the release of the files. He blamed Barack Obama. Republicans voted against the release of the files in the Rules Committee. Then they refused to even return to the Rules Committee until they could be protected from future votes on the release. Speaker Johnson sends Congress home a day early before break. They sent the Deputy Attorney General to meet with Maxwell. She says something favorable about the president. Miraculously, she gets transferred to a minimum security facility. No one can explain why. Miraculously, the leaks to the Wall Street Journal stop. We come back from break. We have the Massey discharge petition. Republicans drop a rule, a non-binding resolution trying to kill the Massey discharge petition. The White House says passing the Massey discharge petition is a hostile act. Trying to stop the necessary 218 signatures, according to Republican members that signed it, the White House brought them into the Situation Room, you know, the place where the president goes for time of war, promising things like appropriations or maybe even to primary them. People in the room say you were there. It didn't work. We get the 218 signatures. We eventually pass the Massey petition. You guys didn't release the files. You were forced by Congress, every member of the House except one, and the entire Senate. The reason the president signed it is because it was a veto-proof majority. We can't agree on anything, and yet the entire House but one member and the whole Senate forced the administration to release the files. Kash Patel under oath said to Senator Kennedy, the FBI is not in possession of any credible evidence that Epstein trafficked girls to anyone but himself. We know now that's not true. According to documents, Epstein had a worldwide sex trafficking ring. Girls from Poland, Czechoslovakia, Russia, Paris, modeling agencies sending him girls. He even had a relationship with a summer camp where he groomed girls at a picnic table. Ghislaine Maxwell says 29 Epstein associates cut secret DOJ deals. Turns out there is a list. 6 names readily available if you unredact them. Co-conspirators named, but we got them when you unredact them. Maxwell recently tells a House Oversight Committee that she wants clemency to release more names. Kash Patel under oath said Trump's name appears less than 100 times in the files. We now know that's not true. Trump's name appears more times in the Epstein files than God's name appears in the book about God. Okay, by the way, this is the Trump Bible. Move over, King James. Trump's name also appears more times in the Epstein file than Harry Potter's name appears in the 7 books about Harry Potter. Lutnick says that in 2008, he went to Epstein's home, says he had a massage table in the living room, that Epstein said he got one every day, that it was the right type of massage. He and his wife decide to leave and say they'll never be in a room with him again. Howard then says, I'm sure the Epstein stuff is all on video. He was the greatest blackmailer of all time. Well, how would Howard know that? But now the files are public, and in 2012, we found out that he and his family are on Epstein Island after Epstein pled guilty to state charges. I'm from Florida. I take my family to Disney World, not to Epstein Island. There are documents in the files that dispute the president's claim that he kicked Epstein out of his club. Allegedly, the president said that he asked Epstein to leave. Supported now, that's disputed though, statements from the manager of the club. Now, Madam Attorney General, I have like 25 seconds left. So because I'm curious, and I'd like to see you flip to the Jared Moskowitz section of the binder. I'm interested to see what staff provided on the oppo on me, and because we're in the Olympics, I'm going to give it a grade. I just want to see how good it is. So give me your best one.
So first of all, nothing is funny about mocking the Bible and holding up a Trump Bible. That's what you did. You made a joke, and I find offense to that. That's all I have to say.
I want it from the burn book.
Shame.
I want it from the burn book, which is the best one. What you got?
Has expired. The gentleman from Wisconsin is recognized.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to clear something up that was said earlier and is frequently said and is manifestly not true. And that is the supposed small number of crimes committed by immigrants or illegal immigrants in the country. That has been based on a poorly done study by the Cato Institute, and I believe the Cato Institute itself has even updated that study. The reason that we know that study is not true is that those statistics are not out there. For whatever reason, when somebody is arrested, even for very serious crimes, we do not have on the paperwork whether that person is a legal or illegal immigrant. Okay? If I go to one of my local sheriffs in Wisconsin and ask them how many illegal immigrants in your jail, they will say, I have no idea. We don't keep track of that. When I tour the federal prison right outside of my district, and I ask them, in this federal prison, how many of your inmates are illegal aliens, they will tell me, we have no idea. We don't keep track of that. So whenever you hear a Democrat or anybody, or a pundit, say that, oh, there's so few illegals committing crimes, it is based on nothing, because those statistics are not available anywhere. What I would offer in the next round of appropriation bills, if one of my Democrat colleagues wants to help me out, perhaps in appropriations we can get funds to add to all the paperwork whenever anybody is convicted of crime as to whether or not they are citizen or non-citizen. And then we will have the statistics. But otherwise, whenever you hear somebody say on MSNBC or wherever, oh, so few crimes are committed by illegal immigrants, they don't know what they're talking about because nobody has those numbers. Okay, there's the first thing. Now, the next thing I want to point out We have had what I think is an unprecedented situation in Minnesota in which they are not assisting ICE in dealing with crimes that are going on up there. In other words, ICE is left to its own devices. When I talk to my local sheriffs, they tell me that whenever a federal agency is engaged in work in Wisconsin, they always make themselves available in case that federal agency needs assistance. This could be something like ICE under DEI. It could be drug enforcement. It could be ATF. It could be FBI. It could be Secret Service. It could be the U.S. Marshal. Nobody that I have been able to find, any sheriff in the state of Wisconsin, is aware of any circumstances in which they did not make themselves available to federal law enforcement, either if they need somebody extra to do surveillance, to just park a marked car outside the area, to assist in apprehension of a criminal, if they need assistance with an additional SWAT team, if they need to transport somebody. Local law enforcement is always there. Now, you are not in charge of ICE, but you're in charge of several other agencies. Have you ever heard of anything like what's going on in Minnesota, where the governor or the local mayor refuses to give assistance to federal law enforcement?
I have in Portland and some other cities where they weren't cooperating. But as I said, I spent about 4 days. I did spend 4 days in Minnesota, and I believe many of the local law enforcement wish they could work with us to make their city safe.
Okay, now we'll switch to something else. And first of all, I'd like to thank you for doing this today. You're obviously very bright, obviously very confident, and something I love. You tolerate fools gladly, so I appreciate that trait. You suffer fools gladly. In hearings like this, we often focus on new initiatives undertaken by the department. Today, I'd like to give you an opportunity to discuss actions implemented under the Biden administration's Department of Justice, such as the Foreign Influence Task Force that you have since terminated. And it's always rare to see anything in the government terminated. But could you elaborate on those decisions and highlight the accomplishments of your tenure at Justice?
Thank you for asking that. We are out of time, but may I answer, Chairman?
Go right ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. The Biden administration weaponized the Foreign Corruption Practices Act. And on February 10th, President Trump issued an executive order pausing that for a DOJ review. Under Deputy Attorney General Blanche's supervision, a comprehensive review was led, and the department issued new guidelines protecting all Americans and protecting against the weaponization that happened under the Biden administration.
Time the gentleman has expired. Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from New York is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Bondi, I went over to the department yesterday for a couple of hours to review some of the unredacted materials. And I am looking forward to your detailed explanation for why you have withheld almost half of the documents, which is required by the bill. Now, obviously, there are 3 million documents, so I didn't get through much. But one thing I didn't see was the client list that you said you had on your desk a year ago. I did, however, find a couple of important documents. An 86-page prosecution memo from the Southern District of New York, and a draft indictment from Florida against Jeffrey Epstein's co-conspirators. For reasons that I cannot understand nor are permitted by the bill, they were still redacted, even for members of Congress. So, Ms. Bondi, will you commit right here to immediately providing those 2 documents in unredacted form to members of Congress? Not a complicated question.
Well, I guess it is for you because you have a law degree and those are privileged.
Okay, they're not privileged, but we will discuss that later. I also found an email that I have right here from Jeffrey Epstein to Ghislaine Maxwell that was unredacted.
and it included notes of statements that Donald Trump made about his prior relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Now, there is no reason for this to be hidden from the American people. There is no privilege, there is no attorney-client privilege, and I see you're checking with your staff, and I can assure you, staff, this is not under attorney-client privilege because it was sent from Jeffrey Epstein to Ghislaine Maxwell. Will you commit to publicly providing the unredacted version of this so that the American people can understand the extent of Donald Trump's lies about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein?
You're about as good of a lawyer today as you were when you tried to impeach President Trump in 2016. Have you apologized for that in 2019?
So will you unredact this? Will you unredact this?
You were lead counsel on that. Privileged.
I'm asking you, will you unredact this?
Privileged.
Privileged, of course. I look forward to discussing this more. Now, these are obviously improper redactions.
Well, and let me stop for a minute.
I'm talking.
If they're not privileged,
quiet.
Don't yell at me. If they're not
Mr. Chairman, would you stop the clock? This is on your time. It's not on Mr. Goldman.
Even though you used your improper redactions,
you'll like my answer.
To continue to protect
time
belongs to the member.
We'll be happy to release them.
We'll stop the clock. We'll stop the clock. Time belongs to the member. Go ahead.
Even though you used improper redactions,